Katie Schofield was an elite New Zealand cyclist, reaching world championship level. Now she works in the nutrition world as a sports nutritionist, working with youth athletes, but also elite New Zealand athletes, working at the highest echelon of sport. Belinda and I sat down with Katie and loved listening to her absolutely enthralling journey through sport, through her youth sport into her 20s and reaching that highest level. Katie was a great athlete, but she faced quite a debilitating injury early in her 20s and had to make a choice to change sport at quite a late age. She found early success, but then started plateauing, was dropped from New Zealand teams and then faced a major health diagnosis, which it turned out had been a big part of her fall from success. She had a big comeback, achieving personal bests, but also then just missed out on her ultimate goal by the smallest of margins. She then used a lot of this knowledge, a lot of the success to move into the nutrition world where she's doing incredibly well. But it's her story that really enthralled us. It is a story of resilience, of overcoming many different obstacles. And I think it really highlights that there are a multitude of pathways of ways that you can reach the top. And that even if maybe you don't quite reach that ultimate goal of yours, that striving for success can take you places, can allow you to meet people, can open doors and give you learnings that you can use later in life to help you with success in many other fields. Katie shares with us this journey, but she also shares with us some of her learnings that she wished she had had when she was younger. She shares some of her nutrition tips for youth athletes that she uses today and leaves us with a couple of tools that you'd be able to use with your athletes as well. It's an absolute cracker, this one, and I know you'll enjoy it.
It gives me great pleasure to welcome our next guest, Katie Schofield. Katie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. Super excited for this podcast. And yeah.
Awesome. Hey, look, we have got so many questions, so many so that we've decided that actually we can't cover them all in this this short hour because it will zoom by. But we've got a few questions that we always like to start off with. The first one is we all have had game-changing moments or people in our lives. What do the words game changer mean to you?
I absolutely love this question. For me, it's really about that mind shift that unlocks that potential. And game changer to me is also where you have a moment that has clicked. And I see this in some of the athletes that I work with, where you're working on a bit of a strategy or a different fueling plan, and then they see how it really impacts their training or impacts their performance. So it kind of that's what I think about game changer. It's that moment in time where it's like a light bulb moment. And I guess with that, it's always growing. So you've got that growth mindset, that growth in your ability to implement strategies. And yeah, so that's what I like about the game. And then the name game changer.
No, we often, in education, the light bulb moments too. So totally get that. Totally get that. Can you share a person or a moment that has been a game changer in your life, career, and just explain why?
Do you just want one? I've got a few.
I bet you know what? Give
All of
us as
them.
many as you want. As many as you want.
Oh, where do I start? I would say probably a person was like my first coach where I was really competitive in track and field. Brent Wardy down in Dunedin, amazing human and such a um, uplifting and supportive coach. And I guess when I was going through my track and field career, I had to make a change in my sport because of repetitive injuries. And I think that was my hardest point in my career at that time, to tell my coach that I was moving on. But when I was moving on to a different sport, he was so supportive, stayed in touch. We still stay in touch to this day. Whenever I'm in Dunedin, if I see him around, we'll have a yarn. But so I'd say that was probably one of my first moments. If I forecast forward from then, I had a strength and conditioner, Dr. Angus Ross, who said, okay, Katie, look, you're having all these repeated injuries. Have you tried track cycling? So I guess that was another moment. But I would say my biggest moment was in 2014 when I was diagnosed with REDS. And I know we'll talk about that maybe later tonight, but that was the biggest moment in terms of, do I stop my professional sport here and retire, or do I carry on, get healthy, try get back into the cycling team? And so there was a really I remember this moments where I was like, I could just walk away and leave it there, or I fight to get back. And at that time, I just knew I wasn't done, and I didn't care if I didn't make it, but if I didn't try, that would have been the biggest regret I would have had. So yeah, that, and then that moment in time then spurred me on to do my PhD in that area of REDS and low energy availability. So I think that was a big career moment as well, reflecting back on where I am today. It's crazy how you think about how your life's planned out, but yeah, some of those moments were incredibly hard emotionally and physically. And then you look back and you go, well, that was the path I was supposed to take to get to where I am today.
Yep, cool.
I love that. And it always really interests me, that question, and the people that have the biggest effect on others. And it always seems to be that care and the nurturing of an athlete that really stands out. I think everyone remembers that first person, and you obviously go back to your track and field coach. And the power is in the feeling that they give you, isn't it? And I think that belief, and you never ever lose that. And everyone we've spoken to has chosen someone when they were young that had that profound effect on them. And I think that's really interesting. And I always wonder, do most athletes who are successful have someone at a young age like that? And maybe is that something missing that other athletes perhaps don't get? With that wraparound nurture and care within that sporting environment to love you and push you. So it's going to be interesting as we see other athletes. It's going to be something I keep an eye on. I love that. Katie, can you take us back to when you were young? What's young Katie like? Is she into all sports, or is she just a runner, or what's she doing?
Um, I I specialized early into gymnastics. That was my first love. Fully remember doing cartwheels and handsprings, flick flacks, whatever you want to call them, in our living room. And probably the people that listen to this podcast wouldn't know the Magnificent Seven, the USA women's Olympic
Yep.
gymnastics team.
Yeah.
Shannon Miller's, all of that. Like, I had posters on my wall all about gymnastics. So much that my dad built me a beam in my bedroom. And
Wow,
just
that's a cool dad.
fully, yeah, so cool. And then when I was 13, I broke my knee doing a gymnastics move, and that was the end of gymnastics. When I was doing my rehab and recovering from that, the surgeon was pretty much, you won't be running, you won't be doing any of what an active teenager does, but that gave me a bit of motivation of, no, I'll show you. So that's where I transitioned Well, I guess, while I was doing gymnastics, I was doing track and field, like club day, Saturday mornings, um, the training nights you'd have after school. So was active and running, just loved going fast, loved jumping long and high, anything power. Was not an endurance person at all. School cross country, hated it. Didn't want to do that. Swimming, no. If you want to see me sink, that's where you'll find me in the bottom of the pool. But I guess through high school, I played netball, did a bit of volleyball, but really my primary thing was track and field. Um, so much that in my last year of high school, I decided not to play any team or club sport and just focused on track and field, and did that right through till midway through uni when I decided to do track cycling.
It's interesting that there's two voices around specializing early, or versus playing a multitude of sports, and that's really hard when you do gymnastics, right? My boys did gymnastics to the point where they were asked to kind of do 12 to 15 hours a week, and you don't have time for anything else if you want to be good at gymnastics, really, don't you? Um,
Totally. I remember there were certain days where I'd do a gymnastics competition at the Caledonian Grounds in Dunedin back in the day, and the gymnastics hall was right beside the athletics track. So
uh,
I would go do a routine at gym and then quickly change and go do a 100-meter sprint, because it was like a Tiger Champs. And, I just did it because I loved it and I wanted to do it. And I guess that's what's the great thing with my parents. They're so supportive, and kind of we have this mentality that if you want to do something, go and do it and just find a way.
yep.
Um, and so, I mean, that was really great to have that support. Gymnastics is incredibly hard in terms of the hours you need to put in. But in saying that, I gained so much in terms of body proprioception. I understand my body. I had the flexibility. I had the power, which really, I think, gave me such a great foundation for me to build on. And that's where I think, like, doing a whole lot of sports and being involved in team sports, individual sports, you get that range. And I think that's a great foundation too. So I don't think there's a right way or wrong way. It's whatever that keeps people having fun and being active is really good.
Absolutely. And that was one of my next questions. I remember working with Kerry Hill years ago. Do you know Kerry?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he said to me, if I was young enough to have kids again, I'd put them into gymnastics, and he called it the hour of power. Because essentially you're just doing a whole lot of power exercises, aren't you? And the sprinting speed and all of that stuff that comes from that, it seems to stay with some of those athletes. Well, we've had guys come to football who haven't done gymnastics for years, but they don't seem to lose a lot of that power, even if they are not in the gym training and that. It's a powerful sport for that sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I guess you have that element of skill acquisition too, and the ongoing persistence to get a skill, and you repeat it so many times, and you get that moment where, you know, you end up doing a backflip on the beam and landing it. You're just like, it's insane that rush you get. And so you want to keep doing it. So I think there's that also that psychological element of sticking with something till you get it and
Yeah.
repeating it. Yeah.
Katie, what are some of the things that you wish teenage Katie had known?
Oh gosh. I think it would have been not to take life too seriously and have more fun. I was at going through high school, I was that one that was so dedicated to not only academic but sport. And they say you have sacrifices, but they're actually choices where, I wouldn't go out too much with friends, or go out drinking, or, I'd hang out with people that I was training with, and we'd do Sunday morning sessions on the beach at Tomahawk, and had such a good training group that, I got my fun that way. But I think, there were times where I could have gone out, or I could have gone away for the weekends, or I could have still done my training. Um,
Were you not
and
doing that because you thought it might hamper where you were going to get, or
yeah, I was I have lofty goals and I set high expectations, and uh, I was in that mindset where I've got to do the hard work to get the reward. But I think there is a bit of a balance, and I was probably on the end of training too hard, not
Mm.
enough recovery, and all in my head a little bit of, um, yeah, you need to train hard and to get the result. And I think in hindsight, that probably clouded just going out with friends and spending days at the beach, or yeah, away
yep,
for the weekend.
yep.
It's interesting. So obviously, my daughter, she's not an athlete, but she is constantly studying. So she's 16, turning 17. And actually, I have this whole thing. I'm like, just go to the party, just because I do want. She's just a kid, and I just do want her to have fun as well. Like I want her to have that balance of not just always studying. So yeah, I
Mm,
I hear where you're coming from. Mm.
yeah,
So what were your
it's
goals at
always
that
hard though.
time? You're a, if that's what's driving you as a teenager, you're in athletics. You're a sprinter.
Oh, definitely sprinter,
Yep.
100, 200, 400, not really. But my goals were to like make it to a junior worlds or make it to a Com Games. Oceanias was probably my pinnacle in track and field, which was it's still solid. And but I had people in my training group here had been to the Com Games, who'd been to the Olympics. So, like being immersed in that setting, you're kind of like, well, they can do it, I can do it.
Yep.
Um, and so they were striving for their goals, and I think it just makes you think bigger. So that was kind of my dream to get to a pinnacle event. Fortunately, injury hampered that. Um, but
And do you
still
choose, was some
exciting.
of that from, do you think are you overtraining there, or it's just what
Uh,
sort of led to that?
yeah, that's such a good question. And if I had a crystal ball, I think part of it was um training hard, maybe not knowing about good recovery strategies that I know now. Uh, I think also genetics is part of, I've just been given dodgy knees, and that was my Achilles heel basically, of frequent tendinopathies in my
Yep.
patella tendons, which had plagued me my whole career of sport. But you get
Even when you're in
creative.
cycling.
Yeah, even when you're in cycling, but everyone's going to have their kind of Achilles heel, and you just work around it. And we had to get really creative in the gym, and for me, how to get strong because I could never squat. And
Mm.
I think we did have to think outside the box, and I think that's what's really exciting, that I have this knee that's not really functional, um, and still able to be, up there internationally. So
But
yeah.
it obviously gets to a point where you can't carry on, or if you carry on, you're going to be in pain.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways that I was able to manage it. I I'd have flare-ups of my knee at random times, or it would be from a gym exercise. And so it's always this consistent learning opportunity, like learn, reflect, change, adapt. learn again, change, adapt. So there's always this consistent pattern of trialing new things and seeing what works, doesn't work. And so by the end of my career, I had a really good idea of things that flared up, things that I would try knowing that it could flare it up, but I would put strategies in place to help with reducing inflammation or reducing pain. Um, so yeah, knowing your body is probably another really important factor for any athlete, is to know their bodies, and it takes time.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. I want to circle back to what you mentioned earlier, where you had this environment where you had people who were working at I'm not sure what level, if it was a high level, elite level, but you're surrounded by these people. How much of a role did that play in you reaching that elite level later on and having them so close?
yeah, I guess I look back on that, and there were two pockets of people. There were the people in my track and field days, and then the people in my cycling days. Um, the people that were in my track and field, they were a lot older than me, so from like 5 to 10 years older than me, and so they were incredibly driven and but also really supportive. And I found that so, I don't know what the word is, but even though they're competing for the same spot, the same team in an individual event, they were so supportive of each other to get there. Um, and so being in that environment, it was almost, yeah, come on, Katie, do this rep, do that with me, do that beside me. And it just pushed you to go that extra, try get that person the first 5 meters, even though you knew that they were going to blow you out by 50 meters.
Yep.
So that just kind of that more encouraging environment of, yeah, you can do it, do it. Whereas in the cycling environment, they were more my peers in terms of ability and age, even though I think tables had turned, I was a lot older than them by then. Um, but I think because we were a lot closer in terms of physical ability, it's almost like if you go that inch further, I'm going to go that inch further, and so you just
Yep.
end up doing that. So different ways of pushing yourself.
Yep. That was more sort of iron sharpens iron, where perhaps the running was it almost sounds like you had mentors without searching for mentors, just being part of that environment and learning from them being a little bit older.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like the way
It's
you
really
put
interesting
that.
because I think we spoke with Craig Harrison. His big takeaway for parents was go and get a mentor who's not friend, not family for your youth athlete. David Galbraith, I think one of his big things about three things for committing to your dream is go and get a mentor who's not a friend or not a family. And it almost sounds like you had multiple people quite close, just a little bit older than you, but old enough that they were almost a mentor. Um, would you kind of agree with that? Like,
Oh, absolutely, because I'd have other people that were striving for, whether it was job or academic, um, or even my friends outside from school, um, striving for things that weren't related to my sport, and having them to lean on to go, oh, this training session was really hard, um, or I went overseas, and you kind of get together and catch up with friends from overseas and just catch up on life, and you get a buzz from that, and they're able to shed light on what you're going through from a totally different perspective, which enables you to look at your situation a bit differently and go, oh, actually, nah, I did all right then. Like, it wasn't as bad as what I thought in that race. Yeah.
yeah, totally. Oh, that's really interesting. I want to circle back around again. I'm going around in
So,
circles. But you mentioned Angus Ross as one of your people who was a bit of a game changer for you. And I don't know if people know Angus or not, but he's been a bobsledder for New Zealand at multiple Winter Games. He's married to Sarah Cowley Ross, an Olympian. He works for High Performance Sport New Zealand. I think he still does.
Yeah,
Is the lead power coach, and uh, he's on my list of names to get on the podcast because I really want
right.
to talk to him about a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, an incredibly talented coach when you read about him, and an incredibly intelligent guy within that world. Um, did he spot that you had something that might work in the cycling world? Um, and how did that sort of work?
Yeah, so he was writing my strength and conditioning program for track and field. So that's how I came to know Gus. I guess with my recurring knee niggles, he was also working with some track cyclists at the time. And so he's like, Katie, you need to give us a go. Why don't we get you on a watt bike, which is just a bike that measures how powerful you are. So I went to the University of Otago to get on their bike to measure my peak power, basically how hard I can pedal for in 5 seconds. And I did okay numbers there. So he's like, I think you got a shot at this. Like, have you considered it? And at that time, I didn't even know about track cycling. um, so uh, yeah, I guess that paved the way of um, trialing it, and he introduced me to um, one of the guys who was in the New Zealand team and training in the same facility as me. And he basically took me under his wing and taught me everything from that moment. And yeah, made a pretty swift transition. I think it took a year to then, might have even been less than a year till I rode nationals down
Wow.
in Invercargill.
So was it love
Um,
at first ride, or was it holy crap, what have I got
uh,
myself into? Or
do you know what? It was terrifying and exciting at the same time, riding on the track. And
mm,
um, my coach at the time, Dan, he took me out and we just rode around the top the first time. And apparently that doesn't really happen the first time you ride a track. But, I didn't know any better. And I just loved the speed. The training itself was very similar to track and field. So in terms of an energy system, it was no different. Riding a bike, totally different. And I certainly underestimated how long it takes you to learn to ride a bike properly. And given I was really late coming into track cycling, I think I was 24, 25, which nowadays is probably unheard of.
yeah,
Um, but I guess there was that transfer of power and the ability to put your mind to something. I love a new challenge, and that was a new challenge that didn't hurt my knees. I could train hard for it, and you could see incremental gains quite quickly, and I think that's why I stuck with it from doing nationals and placing sixth or something my first national to the next year winning. So
yeah,
it's those kind of gains that helped for sure.
yeah, awesome. I mean, that's incredibly late to come to any sport, really, let alone like I see people riding on that track and they are steep banks. Like they're
They
pretty
look
crazy some of the
steeper.
stuff they do, right? At the speeds they go.
Yeah, I mean, if I had my time again, I wish I started earlier, but who knows what it would have happened then. You don't know, and you can't keep looking back. But yeah, definitely late into the sport, which might surprise a few people, for sure.
So your track cycling journey then led you onto the study that you undertook. Could you talk us through that journey and how that all came about?
Yeah, so I was living in Invercargill. After I finished my master's at the University of Otago, I decided to move from Dunedin to Invercargill to train full time. I worked as well throughout my whole cycling career until the last 4-ish years, where I was able to be paid as a professional athlete. But I still worked because that was not enough to live on at that time. So I did heaps of contracting work. Part of that was through the SIT in Invercargill, Southern Institute of Technology. So training with a couple of the guys there that were based there and got invited along to their track sessions, which was really helpful because being a sprinter, you need to be on the track. It's not something you can really train on the road. It's really important that you have track time. So that was really helpful in terms of getting my skill set there, getting more speed, being in a training environment to help me excel. And then in end of 2011, 2012, I got invited into the Cycling New Zealand program to compete in Oceania's World Cups and then World Champs in 2012. And that was kind of like a fast track into qualifying for London Olympics. Unfortunately, a team sprint, which I was targeted for as the starter, we didn't manage to qualify, but I ended up being the reserve for the London Olympic team. And then in 2013, our women's program wasn't funded, so we were essentially given minimal resource to be able to stay in the team and train, which was a bit hard, but it also, when you look back, it also makes the people who want to be there to train and to work hard. And we had that in 2013, which we had a really good group of training. The men were still supported, so we were able to piggyback off their training sessions and still train with them and still have a training environment. So it was really cool. And then in 2014, we were asked to move up to Cambridge to be part of the centralised program up there. So I moved everything, packed up my car and drove up, found a flat in Cambridge. And 2014 was like, right, I'm in, want to be here for Common Games, want to make 2016 Olympics because I missed out in London. And that was in January. And then in March, I got told I wasn't supported in the program anymore because my performances had plateaued. So that was, like I said earlier, that was kind of like my moment in time of, well, probably should retire. I'm like 29. Maybe this is me. And I had a few health complications, and this is where REDS come in. I was diagnosed with REDS from a lovely endocrinologist, Dr. Megan Ogilvie, who's incredible, who introduced me to this term and this diagnosis, which I hadn't heard of. And me being my scientific brain just delved deep into the literature, which was very minimal because it was only coined in 2014, that diagnosis. And working with Megan, working on myself. So I made the decision, right, I'm going to get back into the team, but I need to get myself healthy. Mm-hmm. So stripped everything back, pretty much coached myself with my, I guess if we go back, my undergraduate degrees were physical education and sport science, but then also did human nutrition. So I had the knowledge, I had the understanding. I'd been training for the last, 2-3 years with pretty good training structure. So I knew what to do and I knew how to get faster. I just needed to get healthy. So that was a lot. That was a lot for me to find a new support network, find a job, find different ways of training because I wasn't able to get on the track as easily as I did previously. Find a gym, find a physio, find all this support so that my end goal was to get back in the team by the end of the year because I wanted to go to World Champs in 2015. So yeah, Com Games dream done, but I had to get my health back. And so with the process of getting myself back onto the team, which I did at the end of the year, I learned so much about myself and how to feel properly, how to rest better, manage injury. But I think there's also a moment where I was fortunate that I had life outside of sport, and I think that was really key. I had other connections that I could lean on. I was still working. Yeah, I think that was probably helpful as well because I wasn't just Katie the cyclist. Sorry, this is a long-winded story, but
No, this is great.
essentially,
Keep going.
Yeah, this is
I'm
great.
loving it.
So I guess I would say my pinnacle career moment was World Champs in 2015. More for the fact that I got back on the team and then I was able to compete and I blew PBs out the water with my 200 meter, flying 200 meter and my standing 500 meter time trial. But I will say, like, I was a mediocre athlete. Like, yes, I went to World Champs, but I wasn't winning medals. But that was such a highlight for me because of the crap I'd been through previously. So I was like, great, I'm on this good momentum, competed at all the 2015 World Cups. And then 2016, I was like, right, Rio Olympic Games, it's on. I want to be there. So I knew how hard it was, like watching your teammates compete in London and you're not there. And yeah, early 2016, we had some World Cups, we had nationals, and yeah, cycling said, Katie, we're not going to continue. You've plateaued again. You're not improving. So this is the end of the road for you. And I was incredibly crushed because I felt I was still on the up. But when you look back, yeah, the rate of my progression just wasn't what they were needing. And likely I was going to retire after London. So probably not a good investment strategy for them moving forward. So yeah, that was absolutely gut-wrenching.
At the time, did you feel like you hadn't quite
Absolutely.
maxed out what
Yeah.
you could do?
Yeah, because I mean, I'm still improving. I think, and that was a really big pill to swallow. I was still improving, but my rate of progression wasn't what they were after. And you look at that and you're like, okay, I can make sense of that now, but when you're
Yep.
in the thick of it and your dream has just been crushed, you're just like, how can they do this? This is just not fair.
Yeah.
And
They
you have
hold a
every
lot of
right to
power,
do that.
those organisations, though, don't they? And you've seen
Absolutely.
a lot of those Olympic sports.
Yeah, and sport is brutal,
Yeah.
and that's what I signed up for. So I didn't make it, but as much as it was devastating and crushing and took me some time to find my feet, my experiences have so much ingrained where I am now that I wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a few things, but no, I wouldn't change the path I've now come on. So after I decided, middle of it was pre-Rio, I was like, okay, I'm stopping now, hang up the bike for good. Yeah, there's basically nowhere to move from that point in terms of career in sport. Yeah, it took me a bit of time to kind of figure out what I want to do next. I'd finished my study. I had a master's. in physical education. What was I going to do next? Job-wise, quite limited, I guess. I
Yeah.
didn't really have a specific niche like teaching or like physio. I had such a broad range of skills with no actual job direction, which was quite frustrating for me. Um,
And I guess coming from someone who's been really focused, you probably know what you're doing every minute of every day. I can imagine that's really tough.
yeah, you kind of know what you're doing for the year because your contract would be every year. So you kind of like it would get up to your contract time and you'd just be a little bit on edge because you're like, gosh, I don't even know if I'm going to be here next year or not.
Yeah.
Um, so it was that. But I ended up getting a job at the University of Waikato, which again was pretty brave of me to be. There's a lab based in the Cambridge Velodrome of the university. So still go to your place of work, but not have the same job, I think was
Mm.
Yeah.
one really hard, but also it was kind of, well, I've moved on, then that's the best thing. If I've moved on, that's fine. Keep going. So I was working there as a kind of like a sport coordinator facilitator. So I take schools through like a day in the life of a sports scientist. So we take
Cool.
kids in and we do some testing on the treadmill, see how fit they were. We do speed lights, see how fast they were. And then we get them on the track and they'd have a go around the velodrome on their bike. So it was kind of like an experience day for school kids, and that was so much fun. But I guess being immersed in a university setting, I was interacting with all the lecturers and the researchers. And yeah, I guess my spark for research lit up again. And I thought after my master's, there's no way I'm going to do a PhD. But it just kind of fell in place. Dr. Stacey Sim was getting an appointment at the university, and it's funny how like the full circle. So I remember when I just started my master's, she was finishing her PhD at University of Otago. So I knew of the Stacey Sims and how amazing she was, and then she'd gone off to the States to do more postdoc work. And when I heard she was coming back, I was like, oh my gosh, how cool! I wonder if she'd be interested in supervising me for a PhD. Her and another researcher, Professor Holly Thorpe, incredibly instrumental in, I guess, encouraging me and kind of pushing me a little bit, yeah, I think you should do a PhD because I had this topic of reds and low energy availability in a way that hadn't really been thought about before. And so from my experiences, I wanted to learn more about it. And so
Yeah.
that's where this PhD topic came about. Um, and so, yeah, hit them both up and said, hey, I've got this topic, really passionate about it. I want to drive it. Could you be my mentors and supervisors for this? But my one caveat was if I don't get a scholarship, I'm not doing it because fees, I'd been there before,
Yeah.
masters, trying to pay for fees, um, and then trying to work on top of that to pay for fees. I was like, I just can't. So
And you're already in your 30s, it's not like you're 18,
yeah, I know.
When you're 18, debt's nothing, but when you're in your
Yeah,
30s, it's something
I know
different, right?
exactly. And so that was my thing. I was just like, well, I'll leave it. If I don't get a scholarship, universal spoken. But fortunate I got a scholarship with the University of Waikato, and so incredibly grateful for that because I've lived out what I've been really passionate about and interested about to find more and to work with amazing athletes to help with my study, amazing group, even the university and the other PhD students I was immersed around. Um, fantastic, like I would do another PhD again because I had so much fun and so much support. And I know that hasn't been everyone's experience, but yeah, my supervisors were incredibly supportive and encouraging. And yeah, it's led me to a path which I never thought I'd do, nutrition. I did the degree more as I'm interested about food, I love food, but never thought I would be a nutritionist. Um, I thought I'd be a physiologist, to be honest, or a biomechanist, but
Yep.
that didn't happen. We've got the background for it. And so did the PhD, and then COVID hit. I was like, gosh, I really want to do a postdoc. But funding was all pulled from all postdocs in COVID times. And so that's where I set up my own KS consulting business after jumping through a few of the hoops to get registered with the New Zealand Society of Nutrition. Yeah, so it's just, it blows my mind. It makes me feel so grateful when I'm having to tell this, my experiences and where I am today.
It's a great story, Katie, and I think there's a couple of things that stand out. Obviously, there's your discipline and your resilience through some really tough times, but I think there's also like a story of ability to find environments that are supportive, and the number of people through your life who've been there. You talk about success. That seems to play a big role in everyone's success. Finding the right environment, finding the right people, but being brave enough to step into those environments as well. Um, Amazing. Can I go back a little bit to when you had Reds? Um, it's a really interesting topic. Having worked with a lot of teens, Belinda and I both have teens at the moment. Um, if you look back, how long do you think you had it for? And you know, how much of a role was that playing on you either plateauing or not performing at certain times?
Yeah, Ben, that's a really good question. I would say I was probably grappling it with for 2, 3 years.
It's a long time.
If I'm not, yeah. Um, I guess my first, maybe I should explain what REDS is
Yes.
and low
Yeah,
energy
that'd be great.
availability. Yeah,
Yep.
so if we start with low energy availability, it's defined as when you have um, not enough energy for your body to sustain normal functioning once you take in your dietary intake, so the food you eat minus what you're expending in exercise. So your body is running low, running on empty. It's like an empty fuel tank. Your engine is not really going to start. Um, and so REDS, relative energy deficiency in sport, is the chronic condition of low energy availability.
Right.
So you might have periods where in the week you might be in low energy availability just because you have a high training volume or you don't quite meet your energy requirements. But if that is sustained over time, that's when REDS diagnosis can come about. And there's little signs, symptoms, I guess, that you could pick up on. For me, I lost my menstrual cycle at that time. When you go to GPs, they just say, oh, you're just an athlete, you're training hard, that's expected. But I knew myself now something was wrong, like that's not normal. You should need to be healthy human, and that if that's not functioning, something's wrong.
And is
But
that
when you,
just the old school thinking that for decades they thought if you were training really hard that you didn't get your menstrual cycle?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
that was, and I mean, there's still GPs today that will say, oh, if you don't have your menstrual cycle, let's put you on the oral contraceptive pill so you have a menstrual cycle. And that's totally annoys me because that's not fixing the problem. It's just a
Yeah.
band-aid, and being on a pill is not a menstrual cycle anyway. So um yeah, it doesn't really help. But yeah, I guess back at that point, I myself was like, well, sweet, I don't have to worry about that every month because it's easier if you don't have it, and if you're traveling a lot, it's just better if I don't. Um, so from me as an athlete
Mm.
perspective, I was like, sweet, that's cool. Um, but but not good when you look at it. I also became gluten intolerant. So I'm like a carb queen, and I just could not handle bread, pastas. Like, um,
So this is
so
from Reds. You became gluten intolerant.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I may have had a little bit of gluten intolerance throughout my childhood, but that it definitely exasperated when I got this diagnosis. Well, I had known of it for a little while, felt better without having wheat and gluten in my diet. But we now know from the literature that there is a lot more GI distress, like gut tummy issues from underfueling, and
Oh,
it can be a hard thing to overcome when you're trying to um, these regain these functions in your body, because initially the body wants to react to it, but you got to stick with it. So that's where, working with someone who's got the background in REDS or LEA and has good nutrition foundation is really helpful in recovery. But other symptoms was I was tired all the time, even though I was sleeping 8, 9 hours. Mood, mood was probably a big one, where I was just quite blah, not really excitable. So I think that's a really good sign for parents to pick up if you've
mm.
noticed energy is not as much, mood seems a little bit more itchy or cranky than normal.
You're making me want to go and feed my 16-year-old right now.
I mean, within reason, right? There'll be times. But I think another one is like unmotivation to train or to do things that they normally would love to do. They're just unmotivated, or even retract a little bit from social gatherings. Don't really want to be around people is probably these are kind of like from my experiences. And I
Mm.
want to say Reds is so complex and so individualized. When I see athletes in this space, you can't really write a textbook about it. It's, I mean, it needs medical diagnosis for one, and that's even quite a complex procedure of battery of tests. Um, but one symptom might not be the same to the other symptom, and there's a whole bunch of symptoms that could be impacted, and it might be one, or it might be five, or it might be one that's just tipped over slightly. So it's incredibly complex, and not everyone's the same. So that's, I just want to put that out there. This is from my experience. The general trends are low mood, fatigue, not adapting to training, current, like recurring injury, niggles, or recurring sickness. So for me, I had tonsillitis probably every 6 months, and I just get
Wow.
pumped with antibiotics because I had to be on the start line, had to be on a plane racing overseas because we needed to qualify points for the next event and so on. So it was pretty much a quick fix. We need to get you ready, to get you back training, to get you back racing. Um, yeah, I think off the top of my head, those are the key ones.
How lucky are your athletes you're working with now, though? I mean, it's great when you get to work with someone who studied something to a high level, but someone who's lived it and then studied it. I think that's completely different. Um, and it must help you when you're working with those cyclists, with all of those athletes, having lived it yourself.
Yeah, I think it's just I had that understanding of where they're at,
Yep.
like emotionally, physically, and I can relate to that because I've been there. And um, I guess I experimented so much on how to get better. I definitely think less is more in the beginning, whereas it's little baby steps. like how I said I like to see progression. I think that's also really helpful in recovery. Like, feel a little bit more energy today, or oh, like I laughed and I smiled at something today, and I wasn't so down in the dumps. And just
Yeah.
having those little glimmers in the day, I think are really important.
Katie, what are the biggest mistakes you see young athletes and their parents making when it comes to nutrition? I mean, this is a huge question, but
Huge question.
throwing it
there's,
out there.
there's a few. I think often I see athletes that are busy, and we're all busy, right? It's like breakfast goes out the window, straight out the door, out of bed late, straight out the door, and then the next meal might be morning tea or lunch. So that's probably one. Like if every person could have a breakfast that is balanced, and when I say balanced, there's carbs and protein in there. I mean, that's a great start. I think from a parent's point of view, what I do see is parents' beliefs or their current nutrition journeys are then put on the kids.
Yep.
So if, say, they're doing a cleanse or trying the keto diet, that's fine for them, but I think it's good to still treat them as growing teenagers and I guess maybe not emphasize it too much, if that makes sense. Because I don't think you want to pass on your beliefs per se, which could be detrimental to a growing teenager.
You've obviously seen that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely when the clean eating era was around. I'm all about having fruit and vegetables, but I would like to strip away this term of clean eating. Why don't we just say we're having more fruit and vegetables in our diet
Yeah.
and, less processed? Well, we're just moving to more whole foods. Yeah, so I mean, part of that is to do with marketing, and that's a whole nother podcast, right? In social media. Um, so I think probably those are the two things. Parents can stay in their lane, help growing teenagers. Teenagers, let's eat breakfast.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. How are the nutritional needs of teenagers different from like adult athletes?
Yeah, well, for one, they're growing, right? So they actually need more fuel. And we really focus on the foundations of, your carbs, your proteins, fruit and vegetables, color. And teenagers are hungry humans, right? So I get a lot of parents saying, "Oh my gosh, I've like gone through another loaf of bread." And I'm going, that's fantastic because they're eating more and like stock it up. Um, Teenagers, they need more of the nutrients like calcium, like iron, as well as overall high energy intake. Fats are really important for teenagers too, because that's really helpful for hormone production. And so there are a few things. So I think if you've got hungry teenagers and they're going through their pantry, I think that's a good sign.
So much for the bank balance, but yes.
Yeah, I know that's what's hard, right?
No.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that's hard is that there's so much information out there. Some of it's marketing, some of it is well-meaning, I
Mm,
think, from certain people. But that's incredibly hard for an adult who has more life experience to cut through. But for a teenager who doesn't have that must be even tougher, right? And
yeah.
they spend so much of their life on social media that they're just bombarded with different messages. Do you see that in the nutrition world?
Oh, totally. Like there's always a diet trend going around and they go in circles. or there's a new one that comes out. And, I'm very much someone like, if someone comes to me with an idea of, I want to try this, and I haven't heard about it, I'm very much, well, I'm happy to go investigate this and look into it for you, and we'll see pros and cons, and we can make the decision if this is a good strategy or not. I had that with the keto diet. We had athletes wanting to do low carb, high fat. And some of the athletes, I mean, they're going to do it whether you say if it's good or not. So for me, it's like, well, if this is what you want to do, I'm going to try and support you as best I can, and we'll see how that goes. And usually they just revert back to a normal standard diet because it's just too challenging. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there because I went on a bit of a side tangent. But with trends and social media, you have these influencers who have no idea about nutrition, or they've done a 2-day course, or they're heavily influenced by a sponsor, that they've got a product and they're affiliated with it. They don't know the product itself or if it's good or bad, but they get money off it. And I think that's something that we need to try and call out.
Yep.
And hopefully we can do that in future. So I think for people who are on social media, you've got to check their credentials. Are they registered under a nutrition board, whether it's registered dietitian, registered nutritionist, and they have the qualifications, and anything that they do say is backed by science. And they're hard to find because they're not ones that get the highest followers. They're not ones that come up on the feeds. It's the ones that have been on TV and they're pushing this protein drink, or but it isn't a difficult space to navigate.
Yeah, is it like a lot of things that often it comes down to basics and eating whole foods that were around, have been around forever, and they work?
Yeah, and I I come back to this all the time with my athletes. It's like nutrition is not sexy. There's not as, shiny supplement food that's gonna make you go fast. It's doing the foundations and doing it well. And that's boring. Like,
Yeah,
it's not a new piece of equipment. It's like you're gonna go fast, a new pair of shoes, or that is doing the basics consistently and doing them well. And that is the basics of balanced plates, proteins, fats, carbs. Um, it's having colors on your plate. But you can make nutrition fun. You can set yourself little challenges. How many colors am I going to put on my plate tonight? Um, what's a new recipe I can try? Can I cook for my family tonight? All these things are really helpful for the future, when they go off flatting, or they go on their own to a team for a tournament. They're kind of self-sufficient. And if they can get the basics done, you know, that's going to just set them up for future.
is there a timing aspect to this where if you're a busy a sporting parent or an athlete and you've got trainings and games and you want to be on point, maybe you've got events and races where you should be taking specific things at a specific time before that, perhaps during and after?
Yeah, we kind of have a rule, like if you've got a training session or say a game, you want to have a decent meal 3 hours out. Noting that if some trainings are straight after school, is probably going to be your lunchtime meal. But what I really want people to focus on is before training, can we have a small snack? that's carbohydrate rich. So whether it's muesli bar or a banana, or even fruit juice, that's gonna give them some extra energy for that training session. What I don't really like seeing is athletes that go 2 to 3 hours without having anything to eat, and then they're expected to go train and train hard. And by the time they finish that training, we're going into the 4.5, or even 5 hour mark of not fueling. And that's going to, well, it may impact one, recovery, but two, it may start with this low energy availability where mood comes into play. They're getting cranky when they're getting home because they just haven't eaten and they haven't fueled their brain and their body. So for me, it's like regular eating points. So breakfast, morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea, dinner, and then maybe even a supper before bed. But you can use those before a training session. So before training, have a bit of a snack. Depending on the duration of the training, we might need something in there. And then after, can we get home, have our dinner pronto? If you're traveling and you're in a car for an hour, then we might need something with a little bit more protein and carbohydrate after that training session, just so that you're not prolonging the time eating to the next meal.
Yep.
So yeah, post training we might focus on the protein aspect. So that's where dairy products come really helpful, whether it's milk or yogurts. And fruit is really helpful too because of the carbohydrate aspect. But we want the protein because that's going to help with the recovery from the muscles being used, and then just helps for maybe the next day training, depending. That is in the morning.
And I know it gets bandied around the half hour after training, after a run. Is that time really specific, or is it not that important?
It depends who you talk to. I think it's really important if you're training the next day, and it's also important just for more getting some carbs in to help replace the carbs that's been used in the training in the muscles. Protein is really helpful from the muscle recovery perspective as well. So I just pretty much say to my athletes, 30 minutes to an hour is really good. If you are able to get your main meal within that time, then just go straight to your main meal.
Perfect. Yep.
Like we knew this was going to happen, Katie. The hour was just going to whiz by. Why? Like we've gone well over an hour, which is why we're obviously going to have you back to cover a whole heap more topics, which we're really excited about. We do like to end on our podcast on 4 questions, which we're going to dive right into. So the first question is, what is one do and one don't for parents of youth athletes?
I would say one do. If we keep it nutrition specific, I would say focus on effort and fun when it comes to nutrition. So like focus on the effort. Have they put effort into maybe packing a snack pack or thinking about what dinner they're having? And then the fun element is like make dinner prep fun, or maybe there's a Sunday morning ritual where there's pancakes, or like kind of build food and family around fun, because I think that could be really cool. I would say don't micromanage what they're eating. Kids have this amazing ability to gravitate to what they feel they need. So I guess let them run with that.
That's cool. And I think both of those things, the do and the don't that you just said, build self-reliance. And that's such a huge part of them taking ownership of their journey, which we know is a big part of leading to success. I like that you can bring that into the nutrition side of things as well. Because you often don't hear that. It often becomes the parent's job to provide food.
Get
But
the
I know,
kids
like,
involved.
yeah, totally, totally.
Mm.
Okay, so if that's for the parents, what about the youth athletes? One do for the youth athletes, one don't for the actual athletes themselves.
I'm probably going to do two do's.
Go for it.
The first one is eat often. So I think that's really important. So like every 2 hours. And the other one is not really related to nutrition, but is be curious. Be curious about what you're doing and why and ask the questions. I think if you can be the student of yourself, student of your sport, you're just going to go so much further. You understand your sport. Um, I think that's really key.
Hmm.
I like that.
Um,
There was a big part of your journey, obviously, learning about yourself. But I think it's interesting because, like
yeah,
we
and I
spoke about
ask a
earlier,
lot of
there's so much
questions.
information out there, and that information probably worked for somebody, but it might not work for you. And like you said, if you're curious, you can then adapt what is working for you. But it's very easy just to grab someone else's plan, someone else's nutrition plan that worked for them, someone else's training plan. But like you say, it may not work. So
Mm,
yeah, that's cool. I
yeah.
like that.
Mm.
And then there was a don't in there, wasn't there? I
Yes.
would I would say don't compare yourself to others and their journey because you might not know half of what is behind the physical body.
Yeah.
Yeah. Belinda wrote a whole newsletter about that last week on comparison, and
Mm.
perfect timing.
Perfect timing. No, and that was, I guess, yeah, I've got a 14-year-old and his build, he's never going to be a stocky. He's like tall and thin, and he's going up against all these bigger guys in football. So he was constantly comparing himself. And it's been great to go through and talk with him. And like he's learning as he's going too. But he's got what's really helped him have been he's got two different football coaches, and they've both been amazing in saying, look, let's work on your strengths. And
Mm.
so it's good because if you're a parent trying to tell your kids something, sometimes they don't listen and they need that other person who's not the parent. And so, yeah, again, having good mentors and stuff. But yep, yep. Katie, what's one book or tool or resource that you would recommend to athletes and or parents?
I'm going to go a bit left field on this
Okay.
because I am such a believer in reflection. So for me, what I've found is those that either journal or write down what their training is and what they found helpful or what they learnt on that training session is your biggest resource. Because you can look back over time and go, oh, yeah, that's right. At that time, I was doing this. But 6 months down the line, I'm like, here, look at what I've done and look at what I've achieved. And I think it's those little micro reflections and then maybe like hit a brick wall or just not going or how you expect to be going. And you look back and you go, actually, no, I am making gains here. It might not be like this, it might be up and down, but
Mhm.
it's got a trend of going up. Um, I think having that, and I've got diaries for like 6 years of my training, and it's been really cool to go back and reflect on that. One, you might remember like you were in a tournament and something funny happened, and it's quite nice to reflect. I remember this term of you got to look back to go forward, and I think that's quite key. So it's not exactly a book or a resource for parents, but I think even just journaling a day of what was one great thing that I did in training today. So
Yeah.
you focus on the positive.
Yep, I love that. And again, we had Todd Bean who said the exact same thing that he gets his kids to journal. And I know Ben, you've the teams that you've coached, you've also got the athletes to be journaling too. So that's really cool
Mm.
answer, Katie. That's cool.
Oh, thanks. I think it brings intent to your next training session because you are then focusing on, okay, what am I actually picking up on here that I can write in my journal? and so you have, I think, intent into a session is really key. So you know what you're doing, or you are striving for something.
But it's almost a tool that speaks to what you're talking about to do, so your curiosity. And then it's a tool that takes away comparison because what you're comparing yourself to is yourself,
So,
right? And so it's almost a tool that speaks to what you're talking about earlier, and I think that's really powerful. So that's awesome that you've given us something that we can go away and use, because it's all right to say go and be curious, don't compare, but to actually have something where you can physically on a daily basis do something that's really positive and to take steps to become successful was awesome.
yeah, and if there are any coaches that listen to this, you can even set aside 5 minutes at the end of the session. Everyone gets their books and they write it down, and then it's done. And I think that continual habit, it's so cool to see some of my athletes down at the track and they're writing down little notebooks, and you're just like, that's just so cool because they're invested and they have that intention.
Totally. And there's actual science behind it, right? What it does to your brain and the connections and pathways that it makes is actually quite profound.
Mm.
Mm. Hey, Katie, it's been amazing talking. I absolutely loved it. Hearing about your journey, what you're doing now in nutrition is amazing. Obviously, we're working with you on some pretty exciting products in the future. And we're going to get you back on. We'd love to do this series where we're doing 10-minute, 15-minute podcasts for parents and athletes on just a specific topic. So anyone listening, that's what we're going to bring to you. You'll be short and sharp, but dive deep into sort of do's and don'ts on a very, very specific topic. But Katie, if there's anyone who wants to read more about you or to get in contact, they might have an athlete they want to work with you. Where do they find you?
Yeah, cool. They can probably find me on Instagram, which is at athlete.nutrition.kd, Katie, or my website, which you should be able to find me if you just Google me. I'm not so active on the socials. I probably need to up my game there. But yeah, we'll work on that. But yeah, reach out, email. There's a contact form on my website, or hit me up in Instagram DMs. Happy to help, happy to answer questions. But like you said, Ben, really excited to dive deeper into some of these questions, and yeah, just willing to help as much people and spread the message about nutrition and fueling well for happy humans.
Absolutely. Katie, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and I know our listeners will have too. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks,
Thank
Katie.
you for the invite.
Hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. Absolute cracker of an interview with Katie. Look, if you'd like some more information on Katie or you'd like to contact her, her links and her contact details are all in the show notes. If you want to find more of our podcast, you can find them on YouTube, you can find them on Spotify. Those links are there as well. We have our Facebook group where we converse with other parents around youth sport and what parents can best do to help their kids on that journey. And then we have our weekly newsletter that comes out as well with all things youth sport. Subscribe to that, it'll come straight to your inbox. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great one.